Growing up, few things mattered to me like Ghostbusters. I watched the movies. I watched the cartoon. I had the toys.
It's the Ghost Trap from the real Ghostbusters. New from Kenner.
And I even played the video games, as awful as they were.
The fuck was that?
To say the franchise meant a lot to me would be an understatement. These guys were my heroes. As silly as it may be to say that, they were always there for me. Anytime I was scared, all I had to do was throw on Ghostbusters because I knew I was safe. No monster in the closet or under my bed could get me knowing the Ghostbusters were around. Even when I was a little older, 12, 13 years old, watching Friday the 13th, I could always put on Ghostbusters afterwards and feel safe and secure. My love for the franchise never waned as I got older either. Sure, I went on to more dark and edgier content, but the Ghostbusters were always a security blanket and the perfect background movie as I've seen it 100 times. I'd always hoped for a third Ghostbusters movie. For years and years, there was always this tease of a third movie. It seemed every 6 months or so for over a decade, news would pop up of a third movie being in development. Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis were always being interviewed saying they're writing another film. So many different rumors, from the Ghostbusters going to hell, Peter Venkman dying off, or even the Ghostbusters taking on Cthulhu.
Uh-oh, I think we made him mad. Run for it!
It seemed everyone wanted to do it, except for Bill Murray, who was the single holdout. But let's be honest here, there is no Ghostbusters without Peter Venkman. Eventually, we did get the fantastic Ghostbusters video game in 2009. It had everything really any Ghostbusters fan would want. The characters were all back with their roles reprised by the original actors. Yes, even Bill Murray. It did an excellent job of continuing where the second film left off and even tying both films together. It was great, but it still wasn't a third film. More time passed and more talk of a third movie continued. Harold Ramis at one point saying a couple writers from The Office were working on a script and that he was waiting to see it.
So, but we're patient. There should be a first draft coming within a few months, and then everyone will take a deep breath and read it and, see if we want to proceed.
Bill Murray would even tease us every now and then with a will he, won't he, trolling the fans anytime he could. Like when he accepted his award for Best Cameo at the 2010 Scream Awards, dressed up in full Ghostbusters gear. Then the unthinkable happened. In 2014, we lost Harold Ramis. One of the original Ghostbusters had passed and it was like a hit in the gut. I've never really cried at the death of a celebrity, but this one hurt. This is Egon Spengler, one of my childhood heroes. I took it pretty hard, binge watching as much Ghostbusters content as I could in honor of his passing. At this point, I knew the franchise was over. How could you make another movie without one of the pillars of the franchise? Shortly after, a reboot of the franchise was announced, an all-female-led reboot of the Ghostbusters franchise. Actually, there were 2 reboots announced, as Sony also announced an all-male reboot starring Channing Tatum that was to be directed by the Russo brothers. Fortunately, that one never came to pass. Unfortunately, the female-led one, however, did happen, and the less said about that one, the better. Wasn't what the fans wanted, and really kicked off Hollywood's obsession with hating already established fan bases, taking something and shaping it into some kind of political message instead of just making an entertaining product. I gave it a chance and I had theories about how it could be connected. Maybe one of the characters is the daughter of so-and-so, or what if, but no. There was no connection, just a few sad, pointless cameos that made a mockery of the original cast and the original movies. So this was it. We would never have another proper Ghostbusters film. That was, until a teaser trailer dropped in January 2019. We got a quick glimpse of a barn, some familiar music, the sounds of a proton pack, and a quick shot of the Ecto-1 hiding underneath the tarp. It was all I needed to lose my mind. As excited as I was, I still had to temper my expectations because I didn't know what we were really getting or what to expect. When photos started to drop, the talk really started up, most notably when McKenna Grace was shown looking an awful lot like Egon Spengler. I had a lot of theories, but it was quite clear she was related to Egon in some fashion. December 9th, 2019 gave us the first real look at the film with the drop of the official trailer. So we knew the film was going to be about a family moving to a small town, clearly the family of Egon Spengler, showing some connections to the first film with the Terror Dogs and Shandor Mines. Unfortunately, as the movie was supposed to be released, we were hit with a global pandemic, which shuttered movie theaters and thus the release of the film. Instead, we were sprinkled a few more trailers revealing more of what to expect, and even a couple giving us a quick hint of the original Ghostbusters. And I would be lying if I said that final trailer didn't destroy me, because I was a mess. My heroes were back after all this time. The film was released in November of 2021, and because of non-stop government overreach, lockdowns, and tyrannical mandates, I wasn't able to see it. I had to wait until the film came out on Blu-ray and digital. It came out on digital first, and I didn't want to get it because I prefer physical copies over digital. However, Sony had released the first 10 minutes of the film on YouTube, and I just had to watch it. It opened with Egon capturing a ghost or something in a mountain and escaping in his truck, only to be chased down by some demonic entity. Back at what I can only assume to be his house, we see Egon attempt to capture this spirit, only to succumb to it. The spirit then leaves the house, and the most heartbreaking thing happens. The PKE meter starts going going off telling us, the audience, that Egon indeed has passed and is now a ghost. I sat there silent, just staring at the screen. I couldn't wait any longer, so I purchased the film. Now, this is the only movie I've ever purchased on digital, and it was only because I had no other options, and I just couldn't take the wait anymore. The next 2 hours were filled with laughter, anxiety, happiness, and sadness. After that initial opening, we are introduced to our family that we will be following through the film. Callie, the mother played by Carrie Coon, Trevor, her son, played by Stranger Things Finn Wolfhard, and Phoebe, her daughter, played by McKenna Grace, who from the get-go looks just like Egon, has the same personality and love of science. This young lady is the heart of the film and carries the entire thing on her shoulders.
Are you using 3?
Yeah. I know how many sides there are in a triangle.
I just thought you were being obtuse.
Now, I don't want to get into a scene-for-scene discussion here because that's not the point. You can simply watch the film for that. Callie, the daughter of Egon Spengler, has issues with her father, as she has feelings of abandonment. He apparently took off, or was never around her, leaving her feeling disconnected from him. Trevor is more interested in girls and can ultimately care less about anything else. Phoebe is the one character that seems to have a strong connection to her grandfather, even though she had never met him. Throughout the film, we meet other supporting characters, some less interesting than others. Lucky, played by Celeste O'Connor, is a young woman that Trevor meets and has a big crush on. To be frank, though, neither Trevor or Lucky are all that interesting. Could have been left completely out of the movie if you ask me. Mr. Gruberson, or Gary Gruberson, is played by the always likable Paul Rudd. He's a seismologist teaching a summer school class who creates a bit of a relationship with Phoebe. Paul Rudd always just seems like he's playing Paul Rudd, but I mean, that's not a bad thing. It's hard not to like the guy.
VHS, but I found this gem in the teacher's lounge. It's great. It's called Cujo.
Podcast, played by Logan Kim, is another student Phoebe meets and befriends in her summer school class. As his name states, he runs a podcast called Mystical Tales of the Unknown Universe and has 1 subscriber, which pays off later in the film. I was worried about this kid initially because I thought he might end up being really annoying, but he's pretty funny and honestly really feels like a young Ray Stantz.
Seriously? How do you, of all people, not know about this?
I'm ashamed.
The chemistry between Phoebe and Podcast almost feels like a prequel story where Egon and Ray meet as children.
What do you call a dead polar bear? Anything you want. It can't hear you now.
We spend the majority of the film following Phoebe as she uncovers what is happening in her small town, as she is guided by the spirit of her grandfather, discovering more about herself and who she is as a person, developing bonds and relationships she might not otherwise had. The film has a very similar plot to the original film, and I think this was intentional. They didn't want to deviate too much from the original source because they were trying to win back the old fan base that they had soured with the 2016 reboot. We've got similar story beats like the reveal of the Ecto-1, capturing the first ghost, and even a jail scene, which gives us one of the most out-of-character moments for Phoebe because she nearly murders a cop with a proton pack after he makes a comment about her grandfather. Egon Spengler was always cool-headed and would have never lost his cool like this.
Captain, these men are a criminal violation of the Environmental Protection Act, and this explosion is a direct result of it. Your mother cannot.
I know a lot of people criticize the film for having a lot of callbacks and member berries, but the film was really made as a love letter to the fans, those of us that carried the Ghostbusters with us our whole lives, and this really was true when it came to the finale of the film. Now, I'm going to spoil it a bit, so if you haven't seen the film, I would stop now, go watch it, then come back. We are at the farmhouse from the beginning of the film where Egon unfortunately passed and Gozer has returned. Our family is in dire straits, looking like they're about to be finished when a familiar voice speaks.
Hey, Flat Top! Have you missed us?
The Ghostbusters are finally back, and this is where I just lost it. If you've ever wanted to see a grown, nearly 40-year-old man cry, this is how you do it. My heroes finally returned, and I cannot contain myself any longer. I was just a pent-up ball of emotion waiting for them to come on screen, and when they did, the floodgates just opened. These days, everyone has the Avengers or the Justice League, but no, these guys are my heroes. My god, just hearing Ray go on, and Vakeman talking shit to Gozer just lit me up. We even got a throwback to the Are You a God bit, and I loved it.
Are you a god?
Ray?
Oh, come on, Ray.
Yes. Yeah, we're all gods.
And it didn't end there. Gozer once again getting the upper hand over the Ghostbusters. We get a one-on-one showdown with Phoebe, and a scene that to me felt like something straight out of Dragon Ball Z. Phoebe, who was struggling against Gozer, suddenly gets help from the spirit of her grandfather Egon. Now, I was not sure if they would actually show him in the movie. I wasn't sure as how I'd feel about it. Like, would it be tacky and disrespectful? But honestly, I felt like it worked, and boy, did it crush me. It brought me back to how I felt when he passed all those years ago. Egon then walks her over to the remaining Ghostbusters with one final shot of our original characters together again for one final time. And honestly, I feel like that was one of the reasons why this was included. There was nothing but tears at this point in the film. I mean, if this franchise means anything to you like it does me, I don't see how you could have dry eyes. Egon's grandkids, Trevor and Phoebe, then both give him a hug. However, it's his daughter Callie that I thought had the most meaning. By this point in the film, Callie had realized that Egon actually wasn't an absent father. He kept tabs on her and followed her as she grew up. He was just unfortunately trying to prevent the end of the world, which I mean is kind of understandable. But as she hugged him and he slowly vanished, to me it felt like we as an audience were saying goodbye to him for one last time, and it was pretty devastating. As the film came to a close, we got a shot of New York City and then the original Ghostbuster theme started and I lost it again. Now keep in mind, this is all within a short time frame of maybe 5 minutes, maybe a little longer, but it was just an emotional roller coaster that I have not been on in a very long time. Ghostbusters Afterlife is not a perfect movie. I very much enjoy it. I think it is a great love letter and send off for the fans. However, I do wish we had gotten more of the original cast. I wish they were integrated more into the film than just really a 5-minute cameo at the end. Also, the phone call Phoebe has with Ray was a little confusing because Ray talks like he didn't believe Egon when Egon was telling him what was coming. These two were really pretty much inseparable in the original films and were always on the same page, so it didn't make sense to me that Ray would suddenly stop believing Egon and they would have this falling out. I feel like this could have been handled better, but I personally don't know how things could have been done differently. The film is ultimately about legacy and family, about not waiting until it's too late to talk to your loved ones or tell them that you care. I mean, Jason Reitman, the director of this film, is the son of Ivan Reitman, who directed the original film, so it really is a passing of the torch in more than one way. I've heard that more Ghostbusters films are in the pipeline, but for me, this is really it. I don't need any more films, as this one was the send-off I needed. No future movie will recreate the feeling I got of watching this. It's kind of silly to say that a Ghostbusters movie brought me on some emotional journey, as it's just a sequel to some comedy movies from the 1980s, but I would be lying if I said it didn't. I want to close this by saying that Harold Ramis was a great writer, director, and actor. He will always be one of my heroes, Dr. Egon Spengler of the Ghostbusters, and he will be forever missed.
SCTV recognizes its responsibility to the community and condemns the excessive use of explicit sexual material in television today. We do, however, love violence, so... We're not homosexual, but we are willing to learn.
All right, I'm opening a trap now. Don't look directly into the trap.
I looked at the trap, Ray.
Turn your screens off.
Well, let's say this Twinkie represents the normal amount of psychokinetic energy in the New York area. According to this morning's sample, it would be a Twinkie 35 feet long, weighing approximately 600 pounds.
You mean you never even had a slinky?
We had part of a slinky, but I straightened it. I think this building should be condemned. There's serious metal fatigue in all the load-bearing members. The wiring is substandard. It's completely inadequate for our power needs. And the neighborhood is like a demilitarized zone. Sorry, Beckman. I'm terrified beyond the capacity for rational thought.
Do you have any hobbies?
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.